We see the impact of mental health every day in our community. This May, Journey Mental Health Center is hosting a series of events for Mental Health Awareness Month, including a high-energy night out of drag bingo, a youth mental health luncheon featuring a powerful lineup of local health, education, and family systems leaders, plus a live fireside chat with Olympic medalist Molly Seidel. That's all right here in Madison to break down the stigma around mental health. Find details and get tickets at journeymhc.org/MHAM. This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, it's the Friday News Roundup, and schools are out for May Day. There's an update on the Ridglan farm situation, and UW funding's uncertainty has been causing more waves. Plus, a special neighbors-only segment on changes to Madison's paid parking. Joining me now is our executive producer, Haley Sperling. Hey, Haley.
Hi, Bianca. We're back here in person, having so much fun.
Here we are, doing the thing. And our newsletter editor, Rob Thomas. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Bianca.
So, oh my goodness, today Madison School District is closed. That's after the union that represents teachers and staff reported that over 70% of teachers plan to attend today's May Day events in support of immigrants. May Day Strong is a national organization effort. There are rallies and marches planned nationwide. And here locally, the organization Voces de la Frontera has a march planned both here in Madison and Milwaukee today. It's going to be a massive event. Schools are out, there's a lot planned, and I know that schools are expecting a lot of students to go to the march as well. And if anyone is moved or surprised by schools being closed, the union shared these statements. Quote, "Our students are experiencing heightened anxiety, leading to absences and trouble concentrating at school, and they are afraid that ICE agents will come for them, their parents, or their friends. A heavy burden no child should have to bear." Man, they're shutting it down today. Folks are going out. It's quite impressive to see, and I'm using that word in the literal sense. What do y'all think? Schools are closed.
I think that it's important, the quote that you shared, that these students are still very afraid and these teachers are still very afraid, and that we are still living in these heightened sense of anxious times. And, I was just in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago, and things are still very much happening there. We're not talking about it as much in the news, but things are still very much happening. ICE is still very much present, and these fears are very real. So shout out to the students for standing up for what they want to stand up for, and for the teachers for helping that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing for students to walk out of school for a protest, like both my daughters did that when they went to school here, but to get the day off from school and still show up in the numbers that they're going to show up today is really inspiring, I think.
Yeah, and I know that the community has been following the story around senior machetes, and like we're being impacted here for sure. And hey, if folks want to know what's planned for today, Voces has a march that starts at 1 p.m. at Library Mall. And then folks are going to head up State Street for a rally at 2 p.m. And that rally is going to be at the state capitol. So it's a day of organizing. Voces de la Frontera on their website, they've outlined the demands that folks are asking for, and these are the demands for the state. They're calling for a stop to 287G. That's the program where sheriff departments partner with ICE to identify and process folks in jail for possible deportation. ACLU Wisconsin calls it Wisconsin's jail to deportation pipeline. So they're trying to put a stop to that. Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy. It's heavy. That's just the first demand. Another is ICE out of our schools and our communities. And lastly, for the state, closing Milwaukee's detention center. There's also the national demands to abolish ICE, citizenship for all, and a just economy for all. So those are the demands that folks will be hearing at the Capitol, I'm sure. And I just want to open it up if anyone has any more thoughts about May Day and what's happening in our community around this. It's going to be a big day.
Well, I do think it's interesting. I was reading in the Cap Times coverage about this, that the last time that MMSD shut down schools because of significant teacher walkout or student walkouts was during the 2011 Act 10 protests. So I think that's just a signpost of just how big of a deal this is and how large of an action this can be. And again, shout out to the students and to the teachers for standing up. Of course, there's been feedback from across the political spectrum on this action. I know Republicans have been chastising Madison and the district for their decision to close the school district down for the day, citing our poor reading rates, citing our poor math rates. And like, that's kind of beside the point, right? Because part of what these protests are also for is for increased funding for schools. And you can point to those numbers too as reasons why we need more funding for schools. Like, we can't be talking about both sides of our mouths here. Like, we need to be paying attention when people who are dealing with the issue are speaking up so loudly about something. Again, I just really want to underscore, like, this is huge. This is really huge.
And I think this is a really good time for this kind of protest. A couple of months ago, there was a huge spotlight on ICE because of what was going on in Minneapolis. I was there last weekend, and I visited Alex Pretty's memorial, which was incredibly moving. Greg Bovino stepped down, Kristi Noem stepped down, and to some degree, I think the spotlight kind of moved away from what ICE has been doing, but it's still happening. Still happening all over the country, as you mentioned, Bianca, with the owner of Senior Machetes. And I think it's a great time to remind people that to not be complacent, that this is happening and this is affecting all our communities.
Yeah, and I recommend folks go back and listen to our conversation with the leader of Centro Hispano, because she really laid it out how frustrated she was at sort of a narrative when something spikes or something happens. Oh, suddenly there are issues happening with ICE. And actually, she says, we deal with this all year. This is an ongoing situation. And to your point, Haley, like, this is I guess this is to both of your guys' point. This is this moment where community, local cities, state, and nation is coming together, like back in 2011. That was so much larger than just Wisconsin. And also, when there's this criticism on Madison, what's new? We're some hostile force to some lawmakers in this state. And I don't think reading scores and math scores are going to be improved by the extra stresses and fear that is obviously pervading these classrooms. And what, like you said, Haley, the teachers are speaking out about, the kids are speaking out about, and they're saying enough is enough. And May Day is not new, so this has been an ongoing thing. And Voces de la Frontera, they've been doing a lot of work in Milwaukee on May 1st, years past, and now, having it back in Madison is a big thing. I also just really appreciate the tagline that they have that is an ongoing call, and it's a good documentary as well, but like, a day without Latinos and immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants, former slaves, indigenous folks, and it's just ludicrous to treat people the way that we have seen documented our neighbors and kids being targeted in inhumane ways. So it's May Day. It's May Day.
Calling out for help, May Day. It's disruptive on purpose, so.
Well, we're going to stick on the topic of activism. Before we do, though, we are going to take a quick break. All right, it's time for our weekly segment, Banking Outside the Box with Oak Bank, with the sponsor of this episode, Oak Bank. It's your opportunity to get your banking and financial questions answered by an expert.
Hi, this is Dan Severson with Oak Bank, Vice President of Mortgage Banking. This week's question is, how much home can I afford? Buying a home is exciting, but before you fall in love with a house, it's important to know what fits comfortably within your budget. At Oak Bank, we look at affordability a little differently than just a price tag. It starts with your income, your monthly obligations, and how those translate into a comfortable monthly payment. Not just what you qualify for, but what makes sense in your life. We factor in things like your debt-to-income ratio, estimated taxes, insurance, and current interest rates to give you a clear picture. From there, we can walk through different scenarios, maybe adjusting your down payment, loan structure, or term to find that right balance. The goal is long-term success, so not stretching you too thin and giving you confidence in your home purchase. The best first step is a simple conversation. Once we understand your goals, we can give you a personalized price range and get you pre-approved. So when the right home comes along, you're ready. At Oak Bank, we are here to guide you through it every step of the way. If you have any questions, please contact us here at Oak Bank.
Huge thanks to Oak Bank for sponsoring this segment. If you've got a banking or financial question, hit the link in the show notes. You might even hear it answered in an upcoming episode. All right, we're back, and we have been on this story for a minute, and who hasn't? Haley, what's going on?
It's me this week. I'm taking you guys back to Ridglan Farms, where I know you spent a decent chunk of time in last week's Friday News Roundup talking about everything that was going on. But in case anyone missed that, take a listen, go back. I'll give you the quick cliff notes. Hundreds of animal rights protesters and activists descended upon Ridglan Farms in an effort to free the captive dogs that are being held and bred in these research and breeding facilities. This was back in late April. And they were met with pepper spray and rubber bullets from the sheriff's department and the many other law enforcement agencies that were there. And in my opinion, not a great look for our Dane County law enforcement. I know, like I mentioned, you guys talked about this last week while I was out. Rob, I believe you mentioned something called a poop moat.
Oh, I did. I foregrounded the poop moat. The owners of the farm is a medieval defense mechanism, built a quote unquote manure-filled trench. And they were actually cited for that because you're not allowed to have a manure storage facility without proper permits. So
yeah.
It felt a little wrong talking about that without you, Haley, because the medieval.
I was.
You're our medieval queen.
Yeah. That is kind of a Ren Fair thing, right? Is it a poop moat?
You can't say poop moat without thinking of Haley Sperling, am I right? All right. Well, thank you for that.
You do wear the really special cow shirt on a regular basis.
That is so true.
Yeah,
that is so
you're
true.
You're the SHIT.
Thanks, Queen. We do have some new developments in this story. First things first, animal rights activists are now suing the Dane County Sheriff's Office over those actions that I just laid out. They claim that law enforcement failed to safely intervene and protect the activists and dogs inside of that facility on that day. Like I said, when tear gas was deployed and rubber bullets were used as well. County Executive Melissa Agard is also named in the lawsuit, though neither the sheriff's office nor Agard have made any public statement on the matter. Essentially, the lawsuit is just arguing that the sheriff's response was really unwarranted and really unnecessary when it comes to how that was handled. But there's even newer news and something that these activists are claiming as a really big win. This week, Ridglan Farms announced that they will be selling, quote, a substantial majority of its dogs to groups that offered to purchase the animals, unquote. So that's huge. That's really, really huge. That is a lot of what these activists have been fighting for. Now, it's not all of the dogs, and there are still a lot of details that have yet to be announced. But what we do know here and now is that Big Dog Ranch Rescue, a Florida-based nonprofit, and the Center for a Humane Economy, which is a welfare advocacy group based in Washington, D.C., are the ones set to take the beagles into their care. I've seen the Associated Press report about 1,500 of the more than 2,000 dogs will be part of that deal. According to Big Dog Ranch Rescue, these dogs will be transferred to receive medical exams, microchips, and vaccinations. And then many of them will be placed with rescue partners across the nation because that's a lot of dogs to deal with. I think what's interesting here is that actually in an April 18th video, Big Dog Ranch board member and noted human Laura Trump said that the rescue group actually offered Ridglan $1 million for the dogs, but that offer was rejected. So clearly something changed here because now those dogs are being sold. So like I said, of course, there's a lot of details still to be worked out here, but what do you guys think of Ridglan's decision to sell? Like, do you think they just want to get this over with?
I'm sorry, I'm a little stuck on not knowing the whole Trump family. Is that Lara Trump, the wife of Eric?
The wife of Eric,
okay.
President Trump's daughter-in-law. And to set even some further context here, according to The Guardian, Big Dog Ranch Rescue has spent millions of dollars on fundraising events at Mar-a-Lago. Take that as you will. Big Dog Ranch Rescue's president is a huge Trump supporter and also a ardent supporter of the quote unquote Stop the Steal campaign to overturn the 2020 election. I don't necessarily want to get too deep into that there because I don't want to bring up any weird conspiracy theories here. Like at the end of the day, it's about the dogs. I do think it's interesting because it brings about this aspect that animal safety and animal rights is sort of this bipartisan issue, right? Because I can't necessarily imagine that the activists who were breaking into Ridglan Farms back in March and April share a lot of the same political opinions as the folks at Big Dog Ranch Rescue.
Well, it's pretty wild to think. I mean, geez, it's inhumane to detain these dogs. Detain. these dogs.
Absolutely. And yet we don't do the same for humans.
Yeah, they talk about strange bedfellows because, like, during that March protest, a former Baywatch actress, Alexandra Paul, was arrested. So it's really quite a big tent here, aligning itself against Ridglan or aligning itself in favor of the dogs. I mean, there was a question because I think in July, Ridglan Farms was going to no longer allowed to be a breeding facility. They could still do research there. So there was a big question by the activists, what are they going to do with all those dogs? And so I think that worry was propelling a lot of these protests and these what they call rescue efforts. So, I mean, whatever the reason was, I'm grateful that they seem to be folding and trying to find new homes for all these beagles.
Yeah, and to your question, Haley, just like what do I think about the decision to sell? I wonder if we're hearing about this plan just earlier, like the protests have pushed this action about where the dog's going to go earlier so people can quell some of those fears from the activists. I'm also really curious, do the activists feel like this is a win? Is this, sufficient? Is this exactly what they wanted? I mean, the big picture here, it feels like a win for the activists. So I don't know. We talked about how cinematic this all has been. This feels like the end of the movie and the music is going to start playing and they're letting our family members, the beagles, out and to find families.
I hope it can be a happy ending. I am seeing from Fox 6 that it will be 1,500 dogs. 1,000 of them will go to Big Dog Ranch Rescue, while the other 500 will go to other organizations. And again, these dogs will start being placed in shelters and care facilities across the country, and they're set to start moving out of Ridglan Farms today. Closer to home, Dane County Humane Society will be assisting in the placement of hundreds of these beagles, and you out there can help out. If you're interested, you can donate to help support this cause. We will throw a link to that in our show note, or even better, you can adopt one of the animals that's already in the Dane County Humane Society shelters. Shelters across the nation are already struggling with incredibly high dog population, and DCHS is looking to clear out their shelter to make room for these incoming pups, which includes nearly 25 dogs that arrived just this Wednesday. So y'all get on over, Dane County Humane Society, go find your new best friend.
Oh my gosh. There's something happening in the universe. There's a lot of action and activity. Well, Haley, thanks for bringing that story. It's good to have an update. Such a massive story. We are going to turn to more news. There's some uncertainty around funding at UW. And before we get to that, though, let's take a quick break. And we're back. Rob, you have the next story. What's happening at UW?
Yeah, this story has been a pretty familiar one over the past year and a half. Federal funding cuts and restrictions under the Trump administration affecting UW-Madison. We've talked on the pod before about how there's been a 17% cut in federal funding for scientific and medical research in the last year at the UW, and also how immigration restrictions have caused the number of international students at the university to drop. But today we're talking about how those cuts are affecting part of the UW that I hadn't heard before was being affected, and that's UW Division of Extension, to the tune of laying off as many of 160 people. So before I go farther, do you guys know what I say when I'm talking about the extension?
I've certainly heard of it. I've heard about UW Extension, and growing up in Wisconsin, I feel like I've probably experienced it more than I know about its structure.
I think that's exactly right. You have probably been in contact with Extension more times than you even realize. I only know what Extension is because when my very first job, I was working as an engagement editor for WisContext, which was a partnership project between, at the time, Wisconsin Public Television, Wisconsin Public Radio, and UW Extension. So these are people that are experts out in the field. They do a lot of naturalist work, and they are people that will literally drop anything they're doing to answer any question that you have about almost anything. Some of the smartest and just kindest people that I have ever worked with.
Yeah, basically it's the Wisconsin idea in action, the idea that the UW isn't this ivory tower in Madison, but reaches out across the state to every community, provides its expertise, provides its help, answers questions. as you say, these people are often so excited to answer questions and help people. It does include like public broadcasting. It does include like those continuing education classes that are offered that, when you want to like learn something new. It also provides education in agricultural and natural resources. And as Becky Jacobs reported in the Cap Times this week, that's what's at play here, because the university gets money from the United States Department of Agriculture to support research specialists and local educators across the state. USDA funding helps educators in Dane County, for example, work on youth development, agriculture, community development, health and well-being, family and financial development, and as I said, natural resources. And right now, USDA funding, which also goes to state programs like Food Share and to the Department of Natural Resources for things like fighting forest fires and forest management, that funding is the subject of a major lawsuit that was filed in March by 20 states, including Wisconsin and the District of Columbia. So what happened was in December, USDA Director Brooke Rollins announced these sweeping new funding restrictions that prevented recipients from spending on programs, and this is sort of the usual suspect for the Trump administration: DEI, immigration, LGBTQ, all those sorts of things. And also, as a par for the course, it was heavy on rhetoric and light on details. And both the university and Attorney General Josh Kaul charged those restrictions are, quote, vague and ambiguous. And the UW doesn't actually have any much guidance on how to follow them. So it's like they don't, they follow the law, but if these things are going beyond the law, they don't want to find out after the fact that they violated and they get their funding pulled or something like that. So right now the UW is saying we're not going to accept any of that money until we get some clarity on what these new restrictions actually mean. UW Vice Chancellor Dorota Brzezinska, who oversees the research arm of the UW-Madison, close to $2 billion in money, said in a court declaration that went along with the lawsuit that, quote, a prolonged pause in receipt of all USDA funding would ultimately result in additional layoffs of UW-Madison personnel, shutting down of critical research and outreach programs, lost opportunities for training of the next generation of researchers, and the loss of graduate students. And so if this pause continues and the UW doesn't have any other way to make up those lost USDA funds, they estimate they would have to lay off 100 to 160 extension employees this year, with the layoff notices going out as early as August. So, I know what your guys' reaction is to that. I think it's a familiar story, but this is an interesting twist on it because, obviously scientific research affects everybody, like Alzheimer's research, everything benefits everybody indirectly. But these extension programs are ones that directly affect all corners of the state, including the ruby red ones where Trump supporters are. I mean, I saw on their website, the extension is sponsoring this big conference in Green Lake next month on rural entrepreneurship. So it's like these are direct effects that are hitting everybody across the state, no matter who you voted for.
It's making me feel numb. It first felt like a cut in my own side, and now I feel numb. And I mean, we need a Fred Rogers to go before Congress or what to say. You said public broadcasting falls under this umbrella. Continuing education, how many downright decent human beings have to suffer from these inane policies and cuts? It's just making me crazy.
Yeah, I think about the potential knowledge and joy that could be lost here. The folks at Extension, like I said, they're teaching you how to do everything from plant a garden to tapping your maple trees to fighting invasive species. They're doing such important work and in such an accessible way that to lose that, like you said, Rob, I think would be losing the Wisconsin idea in action. And is the Wisconsin idea can you put a dollar amount behind that? I mean, we do every year in the legislature, right? Are we not funding this? It's so frustrating, and it's disheartening to say the least. And Bianca, I know you said you're numb. I feel the same way, and I worry that others will also fall into that trap because, malaise is where we really start to see these actions take place, and complicity is the downfall of us all. And I'm not saying that's what we're doing here, but it's like, what will it take? How much more can you cut away before there's nothing left?
Yeah, it's really death by 1,000 cuts. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I'm just like, how much state funds are we using to do all these lawsuits? Like, we could be using to fund our public schools.
Right.
Right. The public is it's being hatcheted at. And it is so important that we stay connected. It is so important in our rural areas and our urban areas that we feel like we have a public connected cause. And that's my POV. Call me a socialist, I guess, but I would rather money be going to UW Extension than money going to pay people to watch folks in prisons. Like, there are decisions that need to be made about how we use public funds. And by golly, I mean, y'all laid it out. I'm saying, by golly, stop flooding our fields.
She's mad when she says, by golly.
You have brought out the rural in me. And hey, let's turn to our public square with some positivity, because we have people shouting out good things in Madison. Our neighbors that we love who keep us connected. Haley, what's our first shout out this week?
Yes, our first shout out is coming from my girl, Sahara M. She says, shout out to Hydrate IV Bar. They give great service and are donating IV proceeds to the Clean Lakes Alliance, keeping Madison's lakes and people healthy. And Sahara was on the show not that long ago talking about Hydrate IV Bar. That's her business. Shout out to her for sending in a shout out and being a neighbor, supporting the show. Love it.
Yes. And you went there, right?
I did.
I want to go. I want to be hydrated.
I did. I didn't get an IV because I'm working through my fear of needles, and people might think that's a little bit hypocritical, as earlier this week I talked about being the most tattooed member of this team, but it's a different kind of needle. But it's a really great space. It's right over by Hilldale. They're doing some really cool stuff, and it's super cute. They actually have, I don't know if I told you guys, but they have like a printout of, Rob, your write-up on where to get spa treatments in Madison, and our printout of our podcast page that we did with them framed in their lobby area, which I just think is so nice.
Sahara, thank you. That is awesome. That is awesome.
Deb N, who I see frequently in my inbox, we have a little email friendship going, wanted to shout out, listen to your mother. After a 9-year hiatus, Listen to Your Mother returns to the Madison area on Mother's Day with a well-crafted 90-minute journey of diverse true stories about motherhood. That's going to be Mother's Day, May 10th, like I said, and that's at Peace Lutheran Church in Wanakee.
Love it. We cannot get enough shine on mothers.
Absolutely.
So, yes, shouting out Jade's mom, who's listening, hopefully.
Who's a member, who's a neighbor.
We got another shout out from Kristen L. She said, shouting out my own Lovely's Take-Home Chef. Fresh, locally sourced meals made weekly for busy families who still want to eat well. And it's all about families. We got to be keeping up with feeding our fams. So thank you, Kristen, for writing that. I want to say Kristen is one of our new neighbors who joined during the spring campaign. She said this, quote, as a busy new business owner and mom, CityCast makes me feel connected and in the know. Before discovering it, I always felt behind on what was happening in my city. Now I can stay informed in a way that actually fits my life, and that's been huge. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I know we also have some new neighbors that we want to shout out who joined this week. So I'm going to give a shout out to these folks. Shout out to DR, Alex S, and Megan D. Little round of applause for them, our new friends.
Yay!
D said, quote, I moved to Madison a year ago and love it. I randomly stumbled upon the Rob at CityCast Madison email, and I look forward to reading it every day. I appreciate the information, updates, and daily/weekly ideas of things to do. It's been great. So shout out to you, Rob at CityCast Madison.
I am so happy to be randomly stumbled upon.
Well, it's more testament. It's more testament to what we're doing is working in your lives. And hey, we love our neighborhood. Thank you all for being neighbors. Thank you to everyone who's been supporting us and still supports us. This is the end of our regular Friday News Roundup. But if you're a neighbor, stick around because there's some parking changes to the Near East Side that we want to talk about. And if you want to become a CityCast Madison neighbor to catch this segment or our past neighbors only content, head over now to membership.citycast.fm/Madison. Thanks for joining me on this Friday News Roundup. Haley Sperling, our cowgirl.
Yeehaw.
And King of the Poop Moat, Rob Thomas.
I don't like my nickname at all.
We're going to need to work on that one. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. We're produced by Jedi Siri Ramos with help this week from Katie McMurran and Elizabeth Kama. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Additional music by POW, courtesy of Epidemic Sounds. Rob Thomas is our newsletter editor. You can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to the CityCast Madison newsletter. Don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Madison. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who cares about labor rights? All right, see you back here Monday morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, thanks for listening and have a wonderful weekend.